Alrighty. Next one is the Magnus Archives. I think we have all the roles assigned.
Correct.
Yeah, alright,
Should be good.
cool. Alright, take it away, narrator, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Chapter 1. John had not wanted to go to the mandatory counseling. What John wanted to do was get back to work. The circular wounds left by the worms didn't stop him from being able to read, and he knew they were still cleaning up the mess after the attack, and the thought of all those strangers in his archives made him twitchy. However, in order to get back to work before the recommended medical leave was over, company policy demanded he attended a counseling session to ensure his desire to return to work wasn't just a trauma response or some rot. Which was why John was so surprised by the result of the session. The psychiatrist had spoken to him for less than 10 minutes before asking if John had ever had a diagnosis for ADHD. John had scoffed, saying that the idea was preposterous, but the psychiatrist persisted, and the more the man told John about the various symptoms, the more John's firm belief that the man was wrong began to waver. John had always been under the assumption that ADHD was purely related to being able to focus on things, and as John had often caught himself focusing so intently that he forgot to eat, he simply assumed it wasn't possible for him to have any attention problem. As it turned out, focusing to the exclusion of all other things like food or sleeping was a major hallmark of ADHD, and not, in fact, a thing that everyone did. And apparently there was a reason that John had had such a dreadful time with procrastinating on school assignments until the last possible minute. Psychiatrists had, of course, recommended a variety of different prescriptions John could try, but in the wake of Prentice's attack? Is that...
Yes.
Oh, yeah, let's get that.
Mhm.
Jane
Prentice's
Prentice.
the idea of doing anything to alter his brain chemistry with Gertrude's killer still out there made him far too nervous. So the psychiatrist had recommended joining a gym. Apparently, regular physical activity could be very useful in managing symptoms for adults with ADHD. John didn't really have much of an excuse not to try either. One of the perks of his new promotion to head archivist had come with a corporate membership to a nearby gym. Since John lived close to where he worked, he figured it couldn't hurt to give it a try. Besides, having needed to run for his life from Prentice, John figured getting a little stronger in case of future emergencies couldn't hurt. Which is how John found himself standing in a gym, feeling very out of his depth and very self-conscious of all the plasters still littering his skin. He had no idea of what to do or where to start.
Hey there. I haven't seen you around, you new?
John tensed at the voice on reflex, still jumpy in general. The woman who spoke looked like she could snap John in half. Not from bulky muscle like he had seen on bodybuilders, but lean, hard muscle. She probably wrestled bears on the weekends. He glanced at the rainbow on her water bottle and the double Venus symbol. And again, maybe no wrestling of bears.
Sorry. Yes, new corporate membership.
He muttered. He wanted to disappear, feeling deeply embarrassed by how obvious it was that he didn't belong here.
Nice. Well, welcome. My name is Becky. If you like, my friends and I kind of help each other out with workout routines. You could join us.
John nearly said no on principle, intending to spend an embarrassing hour on the treadmill, shower, and then never come back here as long as he lived. But he happened to glance over at the friends Becky had pointed to. It was a collection of 5 people. One of them waved in John's direction. They were wearing a shirt that said they, them. John couldn't stop himself from relaxing just at seeing it. He had been beaten up over being queer in high school. It had been one of the many reasons he never bothered going to a gym. But looking at the group, he didn't think there was one great person among them, and it was a surprisingly comforting thought.
I suppose I could.
He began.
Great. I'll introduce you.
He left the gym as part of a new group text and with an invitation to join them again on Wednesday. John was tired, but he felt good. Better than he would have thought. For the first time, the hum of anxious energy that just seemed to live just under his skin was a little less sharp. John slept through the night for the first time since the Prentice attack. By the end of the month, John was going back nearly every day. His paranoia over the death of Gertrude Robinson was growing, and with its horrible sense of anxiety, he felt like he was being watched constantly when he was at work, and he knew his coworkers had noticed his jumpy behavior and probably his suspicions of them. The only place he didn't feel so anxious was with Becky and the others at the gym. Actually, getting to the gym itself sometimes felt like a Herculean task, especially when he had to drag himself away from his work to do so. But once he was there and was greeted by whichever of the posse had shown for the day, he was always glad of it. John had always been a pretty skinny guy, so there wasn't really a great deal of weight for him to lose. So his time spent at the gym began to show in other ways. John hadn't really noticed until he used the bottom of his shirt to wipe at his eyes, and one of the girls gave him a wolf whistle. He knew she didn't mean anything by it. Her girlfriend was standing right next to her, grinning. What? Oh, sorry, that's not me.
It's fine. What?
He asked a bit annoyed, wondering what purpose... Oh, he asked a bit annoyed and worried that perhaps it was all the scars? He couldn't recall removing his shirt around them before, or perhaps he was being mocked, but that didn't make any sense. Julie was usually so nice.
This is a new character?
Yeah, just someone randomly take Julie, please.
Sure. Looks like your core workouts are really paying off. You've got the start of a nice washboard there, John.
Julie said.
What?
John asked again in confusion, cautiously lifting his shirt and glancing in the mirror. She was right. John could see some sharp lines that had not been there before, which was interesting. John shrugged it off. He needed to get back to the exercise. Kathy had promised to give him a boxing lesson, which was much more interesting than anything about his body. John found it was difficult to be paranoid about his coworkers when he felt so good. He'd never been so much less anxious. He hadn't had a panic attack in weeks, and he actually slept through the night most nights. Though he did still have the occasional dream about some of the statements he was recording. The trouble was, his normal schedule of daily gym visits meant that there was no way for him to check out the tunnels on his own and look for clues about Gertrude's murderer. He had tried to let his gym friends know he couldn't make it, but they badgered him until he confessed it was a work thing, and no, it wasn't strictly mandatory, and fine, if Kathy promised to show him how to do the hold from last week, he would come. The one time he tried to go down the tunnels to explore, emerging shaking and scared, he found 13 missed calls in a voice message box full from worried lesbians. Now that John thought about it, maybe going a few rounds with Laura at the gym would be a good idea. Help him work out all that nervous energy from his jaunt in the tunnels. He thought about spying on his coworkers, trying to learn more about them, rule them out as suspects. But doing so would require him to either give up going to the gym as often or give up sleeping. And while before John would have gladly given up sleep if it meant getting answers, he was reluctant to now. He never felt so energized now that he was actually sleeping through the night, and he knew just how easy it would be to fall back into old habits. Besides, he knew his crew of lesbians and non-binary gym rats would probably bodily drag him back to the gym anyway. Secretly, he was grateful for it. It made it easier to make a decision. It didn't stop him from being suspicious of his co-workers, of course. But at least he kept that to business hours. I actually found it quite helpful to talk it through with his new gym friends. The suspected murder of Gertrude Robinson had been a hot topic of conversation at the gym for a while, with there being plenty of members of the Magnus Institute taking advantage of the corporate membership. So it wasn't exactly a secret, and John wasn't as good at hiding his paranoia than he thought he was. The lesbians were the one who suggested that maybe John should investigate the tunnels with his assistants one by one, and if they looked like they knew where they were going, he would know to be suspicious. It was a good plan, so John did just that. He very quickly ruled out Martin and Tim. There was no possible way Martin was that good of an actor, and even if he had been very attentive to John's needs. Becky had pointed out with a laugh that someone caring about him shouldn't be cause for suspicion, unless it was suspicion of a crush, which John immediately decided not to think about. Tim he ruled out for a very different reason, because as John subtly tried to watch Tim, he could see Tim doing the same to him, both trying to determine if the other could have possibly been through the tunnels before. It was such a ridiculous situation that John ended up letting out a startled laugh, and after explaining why to a suspicious Tim, who skeptically squinted eyes only caused John to laugh more, they both ended up laughing about it. They had never really been close friends, but it had broken the tension to bringing them back to where they had been before. Though John was sure to keep his new suspicions of Sasha to himself. He had thought about following her on her lunch breaks to see where she was going, but he found that these days he was eating a great deal more than he used to. He actually needed his lunch breaks to eat. Still, their conversation about the table of artifact storage and her behavior in the tunnels made him nervous, which he combated by more aggressively boxing with Kathy. The more research he did, however, the more he began to suspect that Sasha wasn't exactly Sasha. He had no way to confirm it, though. None of the remaining tapes of the attack on the archives had Sasha's voice. It wasn't until Melaine? Is that right?
Melanie.
No. It wasn't until Melanie mentioned the new girl that John finally accepted that the woman he knew as Sasha was a replacement. John knew he had to do something. He knew it was probably a bad idea to do it alone. He had seen one of the new members at the gym get into some real trouble just a week before by lifting without a proper spotter. John figured maybe it was just a good idea to have support on this. So he called Tim and Martin into his office when Sasha was on her lunch break and presented his findings. He had been very thorough in his research about the not them.
The not them.
Tim understandably did not take it well. He punched a hole in the wall of John's office. Martin flinched violently.
How did I
Tim.
not see it? It's been 8 months. How did I not notice she had been gone for 8 months?
Tim nearly shouted in the way that people yell when they are thinking not to, when they are trying not to.
Tim, it's not your fault.
Martin began.
No, it is. I could have at least noticed. John noticed, for Pete's sake.
John tried to
Tim.
not take offense to that.
Tim, I understand you're upset, but
John began.
No, we have to kill this thing. How do we do it?
John couldn't help but agree.
I think the table in artifact storage might have something to do with it. I don't know what, but I know she's been by to stare at it.
Tim nodded.
So we destroy the table then. All right, I'll bring my axe to work tomorrow.
Tim said, eyes filled with steel.
Guys, whatever it is, we don't know enough about it to know for sure that'll kill it. What if it just makes it angry and we don't have a backup plan? And we still don't know for sure if it's her without those tapes.
Martin said, quickly stepping in and attempting to be the voice of reason. Neither Tim nor John looked convinced, but John reluctantly agreed that more information was probably a good idea before making a rash decision. Tim agreed to follow not Sasha on her lunch break to see what he could find out. But he was firm that once they knew for certain how to kill it, they were going to kill it. Sasha deserved nothing less than the most complete avenging of her death.
Do you need help with moving the bookcase over?
What for?
Martin asked after he left.
What for?
John asked, confused.
To cover the hole Tim punched.
Yes, I suppose it would be a good idea to cover it.
John said, standing. He casually shifted the bookshelf over a foot or so to the left. Martin's eyes widened. The bookcase was a good 2 feet taller than John, and Martin knew for the last 8 times he had helped friends move that books were very much not light. But John had barely grunted. What was more, when John had shifted the bookcase, Martin had caught the slight staining of the fabric on John's sleeves as his biceps flexed. It was a little overwhelming. Martin left the office, his cheeks burning.
Hell yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah, we did it.
Oh,
yeah.
The wrestling bears joke got me.
That was very good. I did
Very
like
good.
that.
Never getting over the
Oh my
gym
God.
lesbians. Oh, I love them.
That was
All right.
great.
Gonna have to go.
Them
Very
lesbians is
cute.
so good.
Very
Yeah.
cute.